So for interfacing, putting your wadding on, if you take your wadding and spread it out on your table, glue side up, so that's the rough side up, lay out your front panel and your back panel and then your base panel. If you just cut round and pin this on and cut round. I've already started my pocket panel as I only had one of the tea towels to practice with, so but don't worry, it's quite so it's exactly the same as that. And then before you fuse it on, you'll have your piece the size that you want, because we're leaving it out of our seam allowances. So but it'll be the same size as your front and back panel and your base. So then what you want to do is then you want to just take your wadding and you want to just trim off 1/2 inch all the way around. Just use your ruler and your rotary cutter, or draw it on and use your scissors, and just 1/2 inch on each side to get it the right size to leave out of your seam allowances. And then you can just fuse it on. And to fuse it on, to make sure it stays in place, because you want to press it from this side really, is I would lay it on this side and I would centre it, and I'd stick a couple of pins in the bottom just to hold it in place, turn it over and then press from this side away from your pins, so that will fuse it on. And then as you're getting close to the bottom, take your pins out and then you can fuse it on down here as well from this side. It fuses much better if you're doing it from this side. Okay, so we're going to mark along the bottom at 3 inch, at 4 inch. Yours will obviously be flat, it won't be pulling in there. 4 inch, and then at 8 inch, and at 9 inch. Okay. So 3, 4, 8 and 9. Please excuse my visitors. And then on all those marks, just put a little slit about 1/4 inch in. Our seam allowance is 1/2 inch, so we can go 1/4 inch. So just put little slits in all those. Try not to cut the cat's tail off while you're doing it. There we go. And what that is going to do is, when we fold it to make space in the front, it will fold quite easily where you've got those little slits in. That guides you where to put those in, so you'll get your little folds like that. Okay, and it'll sit quite flat because it automatically goes to fold where them little slits are. Okay, now as for the top section, now if you cut it like me, you can see here there was a seam allowance. This was at the top, so this was at the top. So what you want to do from your top edge, the very top edge, measure 4 3/4 inches down and draw a line across on the back of your pocket, and then fold the top edge, which is already hemmed, fold it down to that line and then stitch that in place. Make sure your bobbin thread matches your outer fabric so that it all blends in, because it's easier to sew it from this side. Okay, and then we're going to feed in our elastic. So just feed your piece of elastic in, hold it at this end and feed it through. With it being thick elastic like this, it pushes through quite easy without any tools. And then hold it at this edge and then just zigzag it in on one edge. I've gone backwards and forwards about 3 times, so that's zigzagged in along there. And then obviously you're going to pull and ruche up your fabric until you get it how you want here. You'll have your elastic just sticking out this end a little bit, and then holding it in place, you could pin it in a couple of places along here so that it doesn't move. You want a nice even amount of ruche, and then don't do it too much. You don't want too much stretching it. Can you see mine's only pulling in a little bit? and then you can hold it in place, pin it in place here, and then zigzag it at that end as well, backwards and forwards, and then you can just trim the elastic off the ends. I'm afraid I had to do it this way because I've only got one set of tea towels, and I was trying it out. I had to do that. I had to do this section first. So again, just draw a line of 4 3/4 inches down. So again, if you're not using a piece that's already got a hem at the top, fold it down by about 1/4 inch, and then you don't need to top stitch it, just press it down about 1/4 inch and then fold it down and then stitch it into place at the 4 3/4 inch line down the bottom. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay, so now to do the folded section, your elastic channel at the top. So ignore the fact there's a seam here. That's because I cut it right up against the edge, and there was a seam here, as you can see, which was at the top here. Now, if you don't have a seam, however you cut yours, if you don't have a seam here, just fold it over at the top edge. So imagine that's the top edge. Just fold it over by about 1/2 inch, and then press that flat, and that's ready to go. You don't need to stitch that down. And then from that top folded edge, you're going to mark down a line 4 3/4 inches down from that folded edge. So you'll have a 4 3/4 inch line. You can use a disappearing marker and draw that across, and then you will take your folded edge and fold it down to meet that line, and then press that, and then top stitch at 1/8 inch, top stitch at 1/8 inch away from this edge here. Make sure that the thread in your bobbin matches your outside fabric, so it blends in. Because you're sewing it from the back, it's easier to sew it from the back. Okay, and then it'll look nice and neat on the front. So then, to feed your elastic in, you've got your 11-inch piece of elastic. It's quite sturdy. The elastic is quite sturdy, so I didn't need a bodkin or any other tool to like pull it through. It just pushed in. So just push it in until one end is just slightly sticking out at this open end. You could put a couple of pins in here just to hold it in place so it doesn't move, and then sew it in place within your seam allowance, backwards and forwards. I've used a zigzag stitch. I've gone backwards and forwards about 3 times to hold that in place. Okay, and then you'll need to push this, grab your elastic inside, because you should be able to just reach in and pull it out and ruche up your fabric till it looks like this. You don't need to do it a huge lot, as you can see. I'll just turn that round that way. You can see how much narrower it is at the top. You can pull it in a little bit more than that if you want to, but it's quite, with it being a thick elastic, it's quite tight. It's just enough, I think, to stretch a little bit so you can get a water bottle in. So that once it's in, you've stitched it at one side, it's in. You ruche up your fabric until your elastic, and have your elastic so it just peeks out the end. Add a couple of pins in here just to hold it in place, and then stitch it in at this side. Again, I've used a zigzag, but you could just use a straight stitch if you haven't got a zigzag stitch, just to hold that in place, and that should hold everything in place, and it'll only stretch out as far as the fabric will go. Okay, so then that is then ready to add onto the front of your bag. Okay, so for this next part you need pieces F. These are your draw cord channels. We're just going to prepare these and put them aside for later, so just to use one at a time. So I'll just remove the sticker. So turn this over, and then you're just going to
we're going to install the zipper on the back of the bag now.
marks.
So you need your
fold it all the way down
lining panel E, one of those.
And then you're going to press that.
And you need back panel
it,
A, so the back of your bag.
And then you're going to press
and we're going to draw a line approximately 1 inch from the top of the lining piece. Mark all your centres on all 4 sides, because you're going to need them later.
Okay, so that's all.
Make sure you've got
ends
panel E
folded
lining
in.
facing the wrong side
So
up,
make sure
and your back panel
matching
A
length.
right side up.
Now I've just added a little bit of glue to those to help hold them down in place. Okay, so once you've done that, you need to fold them in half, long edge to long edge, and then press them down. Now you can top stitch all these folded edges as well, just to make sure that that doesn't come undone at all. Okay, there we go, top stitched at the ends and all top stitched along the bottom close to the edge, just to hold those together for when we're sewing them into the top section later on. You're going to draw a line which is 12 inches long and 1 inch down. So for a 12-inch box, you're going to start, put the centre line on 6, because that's half of 12. Make sure everything's lined up on the inch line. Okay, there's 6 inch. Now because this shower curtain fabric's quite thin, it can look a bit wavy. Okay, so there we go. You can see the edge is pretty much lined up with the 1 inch mark here, and I've got 6 in the centre. So
mark your centre line on your back panel and make sure your lining fabric is wrong side up before you start drawing your marks.
And you're going to draw a line that's 12 inches long. So 6 inches either side of the centre mark. When you've done that, you're going to move it down 1/4 of an inch. Make sure everything's straight and lined up, and draw another line, and then move it down another 1/4 of an inch. So you'll now be at 1/2 inch from your top line, because if you're using a ruler like mine, the transparent, you can see that the line's all lined up. And then draw a final line there, and then you can just join them up at the end. And then while you're there, from your corners, draw a triangle about 1/2 inch in. So from about 1/2 inch in on that line, about 1/2 inch in on the line, and draw a line to the corner. So you've got a little triangle in each corner. These are your cutting lines. The outside one's your stitching line.
So your lining pocket E is facing wrong side up, and your back panel A is facing right side up. So the right sides together.
Okay. So we're just going to measure a line at the centre. I'm going to use the 12 mark there, and I'm just going to put it about 3/4 of an inch down. So make sure it's 3/4 of an inch all the way down. If you haven't got a ruler like this, you can just go along and make little marks using chalk to mark that off, or a disappearing marker. And then I'll line up the centre mark with a 12, because that's where my centre line is, and then pin that in place. Okay, so pin that along. You don't want that to move. Okay, so that's all pinned down. So what we're going to do now is take that to the sewing machine. I turn my stitch length down to about 1.8 or 2 mil, and I'm going to stitch all the way around the outside box. They're pinned together, and we're just going to stitch all the way around that box. Okay, so it doesn't really matter where you start. I tend to start a couple of inches in from the bottom end, from the left here. And I put the first stitch in. I tend to use the hand wheel to make sure I'm on the line. Then you need to back stitch a couple of times. You're just going to sew all the way to the end. Okay, when you get to the corner, stop with your needle down. Oh, hit back space there by mistake. Stop with your needle down, lift your foot and turn, and then stitch to the next corner. Stop with your needle down, lift and turn. I'm just going to roll this up so it fits under. And then stitch all the way to the other end. Okay, leave your needle down and turn. Same again, and then just stitch to where you started. I like to overlap that a little bit and then back stitch. Okay, so we've stitched all the way around the edge of the box. Okay, so I've just taken all my pins out. So what we need to do now is we need to make a slit. This is your cutting line, this one down the centre. So if you just fold your fabric in half and then just snip on that centre line, and then you can get your scissors in and cut down that line. Stop when you get to the end of the triangle, and then you're going to cut those triangles right up.
Okay, so
right
you
up
pull
to your stitch line.
it through, completely through to the other side.
Through,
now you
get
might
as
notice
close
on
as you
mine that
can
it's the panel
without
lining
cutting through your
panels
stitches.
the wrong way round. But I did voice over earlier in the video to make sure that
If
you got
struggle to
yours
see,
the
I'm
right
actually
way
looking
around.
through
This
my
looks
camera, or
very
use
similar
a
on both
magnifying
sides, so it was an
glass.
easy mistake to make. But yours
Get
should
as
be the
close
right
as you
way
can.
around.
If you have difficulty seeing, I'm actually looking through my camera at the moment, which is magnifying it. Okay, this is so it doesn't pucker at the corners, and then just turn it round and do up the other side. Okay, so that's, you've got a nice hole through there now. I'll just take that label off. Okay, so you're going to take your panel now and push it through the hole to the other side. And when you flip it over, pull it through to the other side. So pull it through to the other side. You want it so that when you pull it through, this will be the right side that you see, because it's the inside of your pocket. Now, as it happens, this is down behind the front of the back panel of your bag. You typically won't really see it anyway. Okay, so then we're going to press all this back, pull it far enough back. I'm going to put some pins in this because it's a very thin material. I don't want to put the iron on that because I'm worried about melting it because it's polyester. So if you pull this back so you can see a little bit of the outside fabric, this will make sure that it doesn't show on the front. So if you just add some pins all the way around just to help prevent that. If you're doing this on a faux leather fabric, you could tape this down. Use some washi tape, not some washi tape, some masking tape or something like that that'll hold it down in place. Out your way. Okay, so that's all pinned. If you find you're puckering in the corners at all, it could be because you've not cut it out right up to your stitches. So it might only need the teeny tiniest fraction more, and then it won't pucker at the corners. Now mine's not puckering on the outside, so that's okay. I'm not so worried about the lining. Okay, so that's it. That's pulled to the back, so that hopefully when we stitch that now, you shouldn't see any of the lining on the inside. Right, now, so you need to get your zip. Okay, so I've got my zip and I've got some quilting tape. Now you can either put your quilting tape onto the wrong side of your opening, or you can put it directly onto the zip. I'm going to put it directly on the zip here because it's a wider zip. Okay, so you don't really need to put it on the ends. Okay, so we'll take the backing off there. Now this is going to go, you need to decide which end you want your zipper pull at. This is the back of the bag, so it'll be against you, so it might make a difference to you which way around it goes. I like to start them from the left there, and then place your opening over your zip. Make sure you've got space at each end. Okay, I'm going to put it on a bit and then I'm going to just flip it over and check, because you want to make sure you've got it even. Okay, so just make sure we've enough covering at the ends on both sides, which we have. Okay, make sure it's a nice even line. You don't want your tape showing, and you don't, if you have your backing fabric shows a little bit, make sure, if it's going to show, make sure it shows all the way around, because then it looks like piping, like you've piped it intentionally, even if you haven't. Okay, so that's pressed down onto the tape. Now you could put your zipper foot on now if you wanted to, and we're going to stitch this down. Now I like to start at the bottom because you tend to notice the bottom less. Make sure everything's flat underneath. Okay, double check again, nothing's curled up. You don't want to be sewing the edges down where they shouldn't be. Okay. Now I find you could use your zipper foot for this to get a more even line, but I find if it's all nicely on, nice and even, nice distance away, I can line up the edge of my foot with my zip like that, so it's right up against the edge of the zip, and then I move my foot over as far as it will go, double check it's not going to hit the foot. And that's where I will stitch at. I will keep my foot lined up against the edge of my zip. You need to make sure your zips are in very straight to do this. I'm going to increase my stitch length to 3.4 because it's a top stitch, and then do a couple of stitches, back stitch a couple of stitches. I'm starting at the bottom, just about 1 inch or 2 from the end, and then you're going to stitch all the way around. Just take your time so that it's nice and straight. I'm just going to stop there, lift my foot, pull the foot out of the way, pull the zipper out the way. Now you're going to stop about 1/8 of an inch past the end, leave your needle down and turn, and then again stitch over that end about 1/8 of an inch away. Might have gone one too far over there. I'm just going to lift my needle. I'm just going to move that over a little bit. You barely notice it on that corner. Hold your fabric taut so it doesn't move. If it does move, as you get down, just slip it, switch it back to where you want it. That's it. And then go back down the other way. Right, I'm just going to put my zip back over. It's more stable when the zip's shut. Okay, then all the way back down this side. Okay, needle down and turn. If it's an acrylic zip, you can just stitch straight across your zip. If it's a metal zip, you'd have to hand crank it to make sure that you go between the teeth. Don't do that with your foot pedal because you'll end up breaking your needle. Okay, move that thread out of the way. So I'm going to stitch to where I started. I like to overlap one and then go back 2 or 3 stitches. Okay. And there we go. That's your zip actually stitched in, nice and neat. So just trim that thread. I'm just going to turn it over. There you go, see it's got a nice even box around it. So I'm going to just take all these pins out. Okay, so now you need your next lining piece E. Now, imagine this fabric here is right side up. It should be right side facing to you now. Place this one right side facing down, so the lining pieces will be right sides together. Line up your centre marks where you've marked the centre, and then you're going to pin this into place. So pin it along the top, and you also want to pin it down both sides, but we're not going to pin it along the bottom. Okay, so what we're now going to do, we're not going to stitch the bottom closed. This bottom opening is where we're going to turn the bag through at the end. So we're going to start at one side, the bag's upside down now here. We're going to stitch along this side, back stitch here, stitch along the top, and then stitch down the other side and back stitch here. Like I say, we're not going to sew this together. Okay, now you have to make sure that you fold your bag out of the way so that you don't sew through that, so it's not underneath. So this is folded now underneath, out of the way. And I'm going to stitch this at just my regular stitch length, my needle back in the middle. And then you can either stitch this at 1/2 to 1/4 of an inch, whichever you choose, as it's on a bag lining and you're not going to see it, it doesn't really matter. So I think I've just got mine at 1/4 of an inch here. So back stitch a couple of times. Okay, stop with your needle down. Lift your foot and turn. Now you'll have to push this part of the bag out of the way so that you've only got your lining. Don't want to stitch it to the bag. Okay, again leave your needle down, lift your foot and turn. Tuck this side of the bag under, out the way, and stitch down the final side. Now if you're doing it with a shower curtain like me, you may want to go around and zigzag you can zigzag in that seam just to be doubly sure that nothing's going to come undone and fray. It'll just extra secure it along there. Okay, so now you're left with your bottom open. So that's now ready to move on. Okay, so if you haven't already, you need to cut your straps now. So you want your long handle straps are 62 inches long, and your grab straps I've cut at 14 inches long, but you can cut them shorter later on if you need to do. Okay, so you do need to heat seal the end of these. This is polypropylene webbing, so it's like a plasticky acrylic. So you can melt the ends to stop it fraying. Okay, you can't do this on cotton or anything like that, so don't be setting anything on fire, and practice safety first. So maybe not do it near your actual bag so that you're not likely to set that on fire. But you need to just heat seal all your end pieces now. It literally only takes a few seconds. I go across twice just to be on the safe side. Okay, that's all my pieces sealed. All we need is one of the 62-inch pieces to start with. So I'll just lay that up the top. But first you're going to need your ruler. Okay, so we're going to measure in from the side. I'm going to draw a line, then we're going to line up with your bottom edge, not with your side edge because that's at an angle. So we're going to line up with your bottom edge. We're going to draw a line in 1 at 5 inches from the edge. So 5 is here in my corner. 5 is here in the corner. So I'm going to draw a chalk line in because you can dust this off afterwards. 1 at 5 inch. So draw as far as you can. That's better. This line's going to be covered up anyway. And I'm just going to draw it up to this zip. If you're doing your front panel, you draw it to the top. And then you're going to draw in at 6 inches as well. So just an inch along. So I'm lining up that line that I've already drawn. That's not there. I'm lining up the line I've already drawn at an inch. So it's flush with the bottom and flush with that line. And then draw another line in. Okay, I'm just going to take that again just up to my zip. And then we're going to do the same on this side. So 5 inches in on this side. Again, I'm just going to go up to my zip. And then another inch across, so that'll be at 6 inches. That's an inch. Nearly went a bit far then. So I'm just lining the chalk up down the centre of the number 1. Okay, that's near as that. And then we need to draw a line turn my ruler around. So we're going to go 3 inches from the top. Make sure the top's lined up with 3 inches. I'm just going to draw between them 2 lines. Okay, and that's basically where we're going to stitch the strap up to. Now you'll have to push your pocket up and out the way to do this. So I'm just going to pull it to the front. And you could either pin or clip that in place so it's out the way. Because we're just going to be sewing just below the pocket here. So this needs to be right up out the way. Okay. Then we need to get our strap. and get some pins, or you could use your quilting tape or some glue. Now on the back here, literally we just lay it on. We'll have a pocket to cover on the front one, but here we can use some pins to hold it in place, or we can use some glue. So you want to line up the left side here, this is the left side here, with this line. Okay, so you can just slightly cover it, and then you've not got to worry about rubbing that line away. And you could add a pin or two into there. Now when you get to that line, I want you to get your chalk and then draw where that line is onto your actual back strap. Okay, so I'm just folding it and drawing in the crease. Okay, so that's your line there. So we'll be stitching up to that line and across, and then I'm just going to measure about 2 inches down, or maybe 1.5 inches down from that line, and put another line. What rubbish chalk I've got. Okay, and then we'll be stitching up and across, and then down the other side. You can put an actual cross in there as well if you want to do. You can draw that in. Okay, so that's the line we're going to be stitching up and down the line, up the side, down this line, and so on and so forth to make that cross. That helps hold it all securely in place. Okay, so then we're going to come across the top. Just move my pins. So when you come up across the top, sort of lean it to the left like this, bring it across, and then it's going to go down this side. So make sure nothing's twisted here, make sure that's going in the right direction. Push that up and then gradually slide it up, and this is how long you'll be able to see when that's pinned at the bottom. I'll just stick a pin in that at the bottom. So again, line it up with the outside edge and just slightly overlap it, then you've not got to worry about rubbing it away. And then that's the length of your shoulder strap. So if you wanted that to be shorter, now's the time to do it before you pin this side down. So you could, if you wanted that shorter, just bring this down off the edge a little till you get it to the length that you want, and then you can cut it off to match. But I found for me this is quite a nice length. So I'm going to pin that in place. Just finish pinning that into place. Okay, so we'll take that to the sewing machine and sew it now. Okay, so we're going to sew these straps on now. So starting at the bottom, this is the bottom of the bag. Now you might want to change, oh, that's not straight. You might want to change to a black thread if you're using black strap like I am, so that you can't see it. I'm just going to use this grey one and have it as a contrast. Okay, so start at the bottom. I'm going to sew in about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Okay, so I'm lining it up. I have a mark on my foot here, 1/8 of an inch across, because this is about 1/4 of an inch. So I put a black line in the middle. In fact, I need to make that darker as it's wearing off. So I'll just recolour that in. Okay, see that black line there? That's where I'm lining up with. Okay, so keep the edge here lined up with that. I'm going to be on a 3.4 stitch length for my top stitch length. Now, you don't need to back stitch here if you don't want to. I always still like to. And then you're just going to sew all the way up the edge, keeping an even distance from the edge. I'm going to get to this line. I'm going to leave my needle down there. I'm going to turn. I'm going to stitch across here. To 1/8 of an inch from the other edge. Leave my needle down. I'm going to turn here and go across at the diagonal. Till 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Now just fold the bottom up. Again, needle down. I'm going to flip it all the way around. Put your foot down. I'm just going to back stitch one there. I think I skipped a stitch. Okay, back down to there, and then foot up again, swivel back round, and I'm going to go up the other side of the cross, still making sure nothing's moved underneath. Now my corner, my line will have slightly moved because I've gone from edge to edge, but I'll just keep it an even distance from that line there. So straight up to the other corner. Okay, 1/8 of an inch from the edge, and then I'm going to swivel round again and then stitch across to where I originally started, and then foot up, swivel it round again, and I'm going to stitch straight back across this line. This line needs to be the strongest really, so this will have a couple of lines of stitching. This is the line that takes the most stress. So I'm going to do a back stitch in that corner, and then up again, turn again, and then down the other side. I'm also going to stitch along the bottom just for added security. Okay, so there we go. So I've stitched up, I've done my box and down around the other side. So you're going to just repeat that now on this side. Okay, so I'm hoping as I've stitched that in the light grey, you can see quite clearly where you're going to be stitching. All this grey, all this chalk will just wipe off with a damp cloth afterwards. Just fold your pocket back down, and there we go. Right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add the grab straps. So these is, if you don't want to use the shoulder straps and you just want to pick it up and grab it, these are going to sit like this. So the easiest way to place these is have your shoulder straps face into the top, so they're nice and straight, and just pin them in place so that they don't move.
Remember to move the long straps first.
Okay, and then get your grab straps. So if you hold it out in a straight line and then just push in like this, it should go around in this kind of direction. It'll go up, this will fold over across the top and make like a U shape. Make sure nothing's twisted, and if you just place one up against this strap, the strap on the left, I'm going to overhang it by about a ½ an inch. I find this helps them pivot in easier when they go when the bags turn through and they go upright. Okay, so pin one there, and then the next side, make sure this is straight. You're going to stick out about ½ an inch there. Pin that one in place. So that's them pinned in, ready to go. So all you're going to do is go to your machine and just base stitch that at about a ½ an inch in. So just sew across ½ an inch in. Doesn't matter if you back stitch or not, it's just to hold it in place until we sew them in to the entire bag later. Okay, there we go, just stitched in place, ready for later when we put the whole bag together.